Hello, my name is Annie Liu, and I'm one of the UTAs for KN 251. This week is pretty heavy on memorization of all the different kinds of joints, so today I'll be giving out different tips on memorizing the different kinds of synovial joints. So overall, we have many different kinds of joints, and we'll be covering the following today. So we will be covering the plane joint right here, and then we'll also be covering the pivot joint, and then the hinge joint, saddle joint, and finally the ball and socket joint, just because of time. We'll be going down the list on their function and a quick mnemonic on the way to memorize them. So the first joint that we'll be going over today will be the plane joint. Now, the plane joint has a non-axial movement, which means that it doesn't move in any axial direction, but it actually has a gliding movement. So if you look in this picture right here, you can see that it goes front and back or side to side, right? During this class, KN 251, the way I remembered this was to relate this back onto a plane on the runway. So the plane on the runway can only move in one direction, basically, as the plane's on the runway. It can move either forwards, or backwards, but can't really rotate since it's limited to the runway. Next, we have the hinge joint, which can actually do uniaxial movement and flexion or extension. So the way that actually helped me to remember this was to remind yourself of the movement of the door hinge, which I have a video right here. And also another good tip is to actually do the movement itself. So for example, the elbow is a hinge joint. So if you move your elbow, you notice that it only goes in a flexion or an extension direction. It can't exactly twist. The portion that you can twist is actually just your wrist portion, but not the actual hinge itself. I have a video of me demonstrating that as well. Also, it is important to note what flexion and extension means. Flexion actually refers to the movement that decreases the angle between the two body parts. So flexion at the elbow will be decreasing the angle between the ulna and the humerus. For the pivot joint, it's also in an uniaxial movement that also does rotation. Vanessa, the other UTA, actually had a great way to remember this, and that's actually the princess wave, which I'm doing in this video as well. Your radius and ulna are actually a pivot point, and when you do the princess wave, you can actually see the radius bone rotating over the ulna. As you can see in the photo above, the ulna itself actually isn't rotating or anything. It is only the radius bone that is rotating over the ulna. So your hand itself, it's facing palm upwards, but then the radius rotates over, which then faces the back of your palm. This motion causes the princess wave itself, and it causes your hand to look like it's rotating, but it is actually the radius bone rotating over the ulna. So now let's cover the saddle joint. It actually has a biaxial movement, which means it can do both abduction and adduction, or abduction and adduction. And one quick way for me to always remember which one is which is that abduction, you get taken away from, so you're moving away. And then adduction, because it's opposite of abduction, you're getting taken back. So abduction, you get taken away. So the saddle joint can actually do abduction and adduction, flexion and extension. The best way to remember this is honestly to remember to do the movement. The joint of the thumb is actually a saddle joint, so you can do this during your exam or something. Here's a video of me doing it as well. So for the ball and socket joint, it's actually a multi-axial joint, which means it can do rotation, abduction, adduction, and flexion and extension. The way to remember this is actually in the name. The way that I remembered it was to associate the ball and socket joint to a baseball and a baseball mitt. You can move the baseball in all directions inside the baseball mitt, and you can also throw the ball by winding up your shoulder, which is also a ball and socket joint. I forgot to mention this a bit earlier, but when the joint is called multi-axial, it means that it can do abduction, adduction, flexion and extension, and also rotation as well. So that's what is so unique about the ball and socket joint, is that it is multi-axial. Thank you so much for watching this video, and make sure to review your structure list and go to class prepared for any questions. I hope this video was helpful, and thank you very much. Happy studying!